between Zoom. There we go. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to Get Those Cryptos, where we talk about all things cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I'm Austin Petrie. I'm live in Dallas, Texas. Mason is in Hong Kong. And today we got a lot of things we're going to talk about. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and to like this video if you already are subscribed. And tonight, it's Wednesday night. It's 8:30. We go live every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. It's crypto night. So make sure you join in every Wednesday night. It's not bingo night. It's crypto night.
Even better.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we got a lot of things we want to talk about. There's a lot looming with regulation within the crypto space. And one of the first things that we're going to talk about is that Bitcoin sees Wall Street warm to trading virtual currency. Now, this was on the New York Times. I actually saw this morning on my phone when I was just reading through the New York Times. And really, it was actually on the front page of the New York Times too, of the physical New York Times. And this is a very, obviously, credible news source. And what they are saying is that the parent company for the New York Stock Exchange, the company is called the Intercontinental Exchange. It's ICE, aka ICE. They have been working on a cryptocurrency exchange of some sort where you could potentially buy cryptocurrency. Well, specifically Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin. And this would be massive for the whole cryptocurrency space, because right now, still as an institutional investor or as a small investor, it's difficult to get into the space because there's so much up in the air with regulation. So Mason, what is this about? What exactly, can you just buy cryptocurrency through this new exchange, or how's it going to work?
Yeah, so this is aimed more at the financial institution. So trying to get big money to flow in. Specifically, they're trying to offer a swap contract, which is a derivative contract that and the reason they're trying to do a swap contract is because it will allow for regulation to be done by the CFTC, and existing regulation already exists there. So they're not going to have to go through any like major hurdles, major loops. And so it's going to be a more streamlined process. So if they can pull this off, it would be huge. You can expect a lot of money to flow into the market, not from retail investors, but just from major players as well.
Yeah, so it says that it's a swap contract, and that a swap contract is more complicated than just buying Bitcoin with dollars. So what exactly is a swap contract?
It's basically, so you have different types of contracts. You have futures contracts, which is an agreement between myself and you at, some price. So I could say, hey, I think it's going to go up. And you're saying, the opposite. You may think it's not going to. So a future allows us to basically speculate on whether we think it's going to go up or down. This is a little different because swap contracts usually involve some sort of cash flows between two parties. And so the really important reason behind it is that they just want to do this so it will be regulated rather than create some new type of fund or new type of contract that they're going to have to then go get regulated, ensure that it's compliant, and jump and create a whole bunch of new regulation for it.
So with this, it says here, the swap contract allows the trading to come under the regulation of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to operate clearly under existing laws, something today's Bitcoin exchanges have started to do. So that's huge, because just with that, they're trying to push it as a commodity. And there's been so much talk about whether some of these cryptos are securities, and that is going to play a huge role, because if they are securities, then they're going to potentially shut down some of these exchanges who don't have the proper licensing, because technically they've been selling illegal securities. And a security, again, it is just like a stock in a company. You go through E-Trade, they're licensed to sell some of these stocks, and these crypto exchanges, should these cryptos be deemed a security, then they are not properly licensed, and they can seek a lot of legal issues, and even holding some of these currencies maybe could seek legal issues, but we shall see. So what exactly does that mean if it is a commodity? Does that mean you can freely trade it and everything's good, Mason?
So if you look at how it's regulated, it just kind of depends on what it ensures that a different regulatory body is in charge. So one of the biggest problems between all the regulation talk has been, okay, is the SEC in charge? Is the CFTC in charge? Is another commission in charge? Who is exactly going to determine what is what? So if you can just put put Bitcoin into the existing securities, the existing commodities laws, it makes things a lot simpler. And that's what a lot of these institutions want to do, because they don't want to have to go deal with 6 months to a year of struggling to get something approved to sell by the SEC or by the CFTC. They just want to be able to do it as fast as possible.
Yeah, and probably as cheap as possible, even though money is probably not an issue for a lot of these crypto projects who've just raised millions and billions of dollars. It's insane. But this is all coming at a time. It seems like right now it's just the calm before the storm, because we keep hearing about all these big institutions, banks. Just last week, the chief executive of NASDAQ said that her company is also looking at creating a virtual currency exchange. So right now it kind of looks like who's gonna be the first to it? Is it gonna be NASDAQ, or is it going to be the New York Stock Exchange or ICE, the parent company? So when that does happen, if it does happen, hopefully when, that is, I see crypto just going to the next level, definitely going past that $1 trillion market cap.
Absolutely. And it is a matter of when it will happen. And because there's so much money involved. And if there's one thing that corporations do well, it's they find ways to make money.
Yeah.
You know, the old saying, money talks, and it definitely does. And people aren't just going to sit idly by and watch someone come take their lunch.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been some FUD recently, some fear, uncertainty, and doubt with Warren Buffett coming out and saying that crypto is rat poison squared. A lot of these arguments that they're saying are honestly pretty funny, just because, I mean, there it is. It says right there. It's like there's no backing to it. They're just calling it names, rat poison squared. And what is Charles Munger? He called it a lot of different names. Did you see everything he called it?
Yeah, I mean, both of them, who are incredibly successful investors, have had not a lot of great things to say.
Yeah.
So, suffice it. And I hate to say they're wrong, but they are. They're just older generation who doesn't really understand this technology. But if you look at Warren Buffett, he's really never invested in technology. He's never been on the cutting edge. He does a great job at finding undervalued companies or undervalued assets and investing in them, but he's never been one to speculate on new emerging technology.
Yeah, and he's come out and said that. He's actually come out and said he didn't explicitly say, I don't understand crypto, but he's kind of assumed that. And then he's come out and has said that I was wrong about Google and I was wrong about Amazon. So it's just not really his
Which is huge if you think about it.
Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt. He is an incredible business person, but the fact that, I mean, he doesn't know the technology space as well as some of these other people, even though I was very surprised when Bill Gates said that he'd short Bitcoin, and it was awesome. I'm sure you saw this, how one of the Winklevoss twins actually tweeted at Bill Gates a little letter. I wish I had it up here, and said, "Dear Bill Gates, you actually can short Bitcoin, and it is pretty easy. Here's how you do it. Put your money where your mouth is." So we'll see. If I doubt Bill Gates comes back, but
no, I don't think he's going to short it either.
Yeah. So going back to potentially ICE or New York Stock Exchange opening a crypto exchange, this CNBC article, is it this one? Oh, it's actually, yeah, it is this one. So there's actually a good video here. I have all these links in the description below, so you can click this. And one of the biggest aspects of this is that they would figure out the whole custodial aspect of it, which means that they could find someone who will actually hold these things, and it would be safe, and it would go along with regulation. So what exactly does that mean, Mason, where ICE has come up with the custodial solution for institutional holders?
So this would be incredibly huge if they've actually figured this out. In the article, they don't actually say what specifically they're going to do, but basically one of the biggest problems with any type of contract, swap, stuff like that is the custodial aspect. And especially when it comes to Bitcoin, which is a bearer asset, meaning whoever holds it owns it, there are a lot of implications with that. And so there's also the technical side. It's not as easy to control, who holds the Bitcoin. You have to make sure that that your infrastructure is set up to handle that. And right now that hasn't been the case, and really still isn't the case, because we need better wallets, we need better ways to secure them and have account recovery, stuff like that. But so if they found a way to be a custodian or have a third-party custodian for the Bitcoin, then they will actually be able to transfer that Bitcoin into people's accounts or their wallets after they interact with a swap or a future or something like that.
Yeah, and when you say they can put it potentially in their wallets, in this article they were saying that this opens it up for pensions and endowment funds, and I mean that is just massive. Who would have thought, like just a couple months ago, when everyone thought Bitcoin was a scam, and years ago when Bitcoin was just this tiny little coin that was used, I mean, everyone thinks it was only used to buy drugs on the internet, but who would have thought that it would evolve to this, where potentially it could be used to be paying out pensions for some of these hardworking people in America.
Pensions and endowments are massive. I mean, that's hundreds of billions of dollars right there, that if they invest in Bitcoin, that is insane. Like, that will bring a large capital influx into the market.
Yeah, and between NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, that is a $32 trillion in market cap flowing between those two markets. So just put that into perspective. If they made a crypto exchange, just one of the two, and if both of them made one, think about how much money, just even if 1% of that went into crypto, it would still change it, because we're cutting edge right now. We're still such early users of all of this. So it's going to be really, really exciting to see. Okay, and so this next week is the biggest crypto conference, and I don't know if it's in the world, but it definitely in America. And it's happening in New York City. They're doing blockchain week. So there's a lot of different projects flying in from all over the world. It's a huge deal. And in the past, during this time, it's called Consensus. That is the conference. During Consensus, the price of crypto always just skyrockets. And I mean, maybe it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, but most of the time, a lot of these projects and companies who have the different coins, they'll wait for, if they have really, really big news, they'll wait and hold it so that they can have a dramatic announcement at this conference. But just last year, I think it was 69%. Yeah, Bitcoin rose 69% during the conference and 138% in 2 months afterwards. So Mason, where do you see it going? You think it's going to happen again?
Yeah, I think this is one of the interesting parts about trading as a whole, is it's all speculative, but people speculate on people's emotions. People speculate on the overall attitude and atmosphere that a market feels. And so I think that Consensus is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, conference. You're going to have all the names there, except for Vitalik, but so it's going to be pretty insane. And I think with anything like that, you're right. Like, people hold off on news. So you have all these projects say, okay, we're announcing our new release, or we're announcing our upgraded version or something like that. And I think all of that really helps to drive investment into the market. And it also, I think, just everyone comes back from some sort of conference and they're like, oh, there's all this cool stuff happening. Maybe I want to invest a little more.
Yeah, and this time last year when this conference went on, of course it was huge then, but just the sentiment from this year to last year, it has seemed like there's so many more people in it. And last year it was just around this time after once consensus happened, and then afterwards is when crypto just went nuts. And in December and January, it just like Bitcoin almost hit 20,000. So a lot of people are saying that Bitcoin potentially by the end of next week will go past 10,000 and everything will hopefully follow suit. But of course, this is not financial advice. None of this ever is. This is just pure entertainment. This is a nice quality show we got going on here, an educational show.
It's all family fun.
Yeah. But it's just, it really is crazy. But I will say, if you are looking to invest in cryptocurrencies, we did make a great video the other week, our top 10 keys when investing in new cryptocurrencies. We made a good, just a list and we actually went through a project called Funfair, and we went through thoroughly and just gave resources and knowledge so that you can have a better understanding when you do want to invest. So definitely check out that video, but it's not financial advice. But yeah, consensus is going to be huge. It's going to be exciting. And the tickets were really expensive though. And that's one thing I didn't really like. I think it was like $2,000 for a ticket. Do you remember?
I think they might be more.
Yeah.
Which is just because, but I think that shows the level of conference that it has become. Crypto always used to be just a bunch of people meeting up some random location to, talk about, some Bitcoin or to talk about Ethereum. And now it's become a multi-billion-dollar market. And, as you bring money into a market, people want to be, they want to have the advantage to meet people who are important. And so this conference will definitely have those people.
Yeah. And even still today, I've been to a couple of Bitcoin and crypto meetups here in Dallas, Texas, pretty big city, a lot of big players in the crypto space. And not huge, but there are a lot of people who are actively involved, Bitcoin hedge funds, everything. And I went to one during Dallas Startup Week, and it was upstairs at this bar, and it was just like shades were closed, super dark, a few people just like hanging out, like just drinking some beers. And I kind of just took a step back and I was like, I can't wait to look back at this in like 10 years. It's like probably going to be like looking back at the internet when everyone was just gathered around one computer, sleeping under their desk like Bill Gates did. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, next let's talk about the Winklevoss twins. They got their 5th patent for exchange traded products using crypto. If you don't know already, the Winklevoss twins, of course, you probably know them from the whole Facebook scandal. They created Facebook, yada, yada. But they have been actively involved in the crypto space for a long time, and they are just wizards. Like they are I think they're crypto billionaires, Bitcoin billionaires, and they have a lot of things going. They also started the Gemini exchange, a big cryptocurrency exchange. So Mason, what exactly is this patent that they got?
Yeah, so the patent is, so they registered 5. Most of them have to do with ETFs, but they're called exchange traded products. So they'll be for digital assets or like crypto assets, stuff like Bitcoin, Ethereum. So I really like the route they're taking, because while they do have just a retail investor exchange, they're looking at it from, I guess, the more institutional side. So they want to offer these types of larger institutional items that people will want to buy rather than just the everyday investor.
So what exactly, if I know they keep trying to get just an ETF, if they got an ETF, what would that mean? Would that be different from what we talked about earlier when we were talking about a New York exchange or a ICE creating a cryptocurrency exchange of their own? Would that swap contract that we talked about earlier, would that be different from creating an ETF for Bitcoin?
Yeah, they would be. So an ETF is more like a mutual fund in the sense that it can have a lot of different assets within it. So it can be more like an index, but it's different from a mutual fund because it's more liquid. You can trade it, exchange it with other people, exchange it for, you can just exchange it on just readily. You can readily trade it. So it's different, and I think they want to go this route because they see it as a way to offer a lot more digital assets and crypto assets. So I think it'll be really awesome if and whenever they implement it. And then they were also talked about, because the patent's like really broad. So like right there, you can see it mentions like systems, methods, and like programs for using the ETF. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out, because if they actually can enforce the patent and be the only ones that allowed these ETPs, then that could be a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're always a couple of years ahead of the game. So I think it's going to definitely lead somewhere. And maybe Gemini Exchange, maybe that's going to be one of the leading platforms soon. Who knows? So I'm looking at the chat right now and I see Eric asked a question. Mason, what's your view on the future of China's crypto regulation? Do you think that will have an effect on US regulation or vice versa?
I absolutely think it'll have an effect. It's interesting because living in Hong Kong and also visiting China, you realize how strong the government is and how they're able to control the entire economy. And so I think that they'll definitely be players in the blockchain space, and they've invested billions of dollars, even though Bitcoin and other stuff like that is still banned. But if you look at, simple things like where most Bitcoin mining is, it's mostly in China. So China has a substantial control over that aspect of Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin and crypto grows, I see, China and the US being two major players. And it'll really just depend. Oh, sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say, it seems like you can't stop crypto. You can't stop Bitcoin because it's so decentralized. And they tried to do a bit of a ban in India. And just recently they had like record-breaking growth of buyers in India, even though it's technically banned. So people are still doing this. They'll always find a way to work around. What were you going to say?
Absolutely. And I think that China is going to become a major player. They're not going to sit around and lose out on billions, if not potentially trillions of dollars. And it'll be interesting to see the way that they implement it, or the way they decide to use this technology, because I could see them accumulating a lot of Bitcoin or a lot of cryptocurrencies if you saw one become a reserve currency. But at the same point, China really likes to control all of their financial, all of their, their entire economy. So I don't see them buying into just an open source platform. I think that they'd want a lot more security and a lot more control over it. But only the market will be able to decide.
Yeah, so again, time will tell. And if anyone has any more questions, definitely be sure to throw them out here in the chat. We will answer them. I got the chat on this computer right here. So next article I want to talk about, ex-Goldman Sachs president says global currency will come, but it's not Bitcoin. And basically what he says is that Bitcoin is too confusing to use. It would be much easily understood how it's created, how it moves, and people can use it. He's saying that Bitcoin and mining, all this stuff, all these buzzwords, I mean, it's just too much, all this lingo, and people don't understand it. And once it comes to a point where maybe there's a coin that is very easily understood and how it works, it's just simplified, then that's when massive adoption can come. What do you think?
I think that's a little more of not wanting to change. We don't look back and say the internet was too complicated, social media was too complicated. I think we just adapt. Things become part of our daily lives. I think he's right in the sense that it does need to be easier, and it will be. But people are going to need to use this stuff. People are going to need to understand the basic premise of how it works, but they're not going to need to understand all the complexities. Most people don't know how the internet works, but they can set up their router. You need to be able to work with new technology, but you don't necessarily have to understand how it works, at least for most people who are going to use this technology.
Yeah, and just thinking about when we were kids using the internet for the first time, I mean, it was just so different than what it is today. And maybe the generation that's growing up with this stuff, the more they use it, the more they are involved with cryptocurrencies. And a lot of them are really young. Like the app Robinhood, the average age, even though it mainly is for trading stocks and everything at no commissions, but they just opened it up to cryptocurrencies, and they actually just opened up to Florida, I think yesterday or today. They're in 5 states. They're trying to do cryptocurrencies on their platform, and the average age of that app is 31 years old. So I mean, you can just tell that it is a lot of millennials coming into it, and people even younger that are really interested in crypto. And even the head of the CFTC, he came out during that talk with the SEC and everyone, and he said, look, I have children at home, and they haven't been interested in the stock market ever. They won't touch it, but they are going wild for crypto. This is something that we need to acknowledge because it is the future. There's so many young people who are interested in it. So, I mean, that's just telling right there. But I do agree that it's such an infancy phases, even though it has actually been around since 2008, but it is evolving a lot quicker right now. And it's going to be something that it does need to get simpler. And how do you see that happening? Do you think one company is going to, like Coinbase, is going to excel that, or is it just going to be a new coin, or you think it's going to be Bitcoin?
I think that there will be a lot of developments made in user design that are going to really help. I think one of the hardest parts about everything right now is that it's not easy to use. It's not pretty. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you also have an educational barrier that people need to understand. Okay, what is security? Why do I need a cold wallet? Stuff like that. And as that becomes easier from either companies or new, software developments, new apps that we can use, that will really help most people. That'll probably take a decent amount of time, but I see that as being a primary way that it will get easier. I think if you look at Robinhood, it's a great example. Most people in our generation do not care about the stock market, mostly because it seemed complex. They were like, I don't even know how to do this. And then Robinhood came up and they said, okay, our generation loves apps. Here's an app. It's easy. And, Robinhood even implemented futures like call and puts, but instead of calling them that, they just said going up or going down. So
Awesome.
They're going to find ways to simplify it to make it easy for people to understand.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, next, let's talk about the first version of Ethereum's Casper upgrade has been published. Now, what the heck does that mean? So Casper is this new, it's this new version of code for Casper. That's actually what happened. And they're trying to move from proof of stake from proof of work, to proof of stake. Now, what does that mean? Mason, can you quickly explain simplified version of that?
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into that, but in the simplest of terms, proof of work requires mining. So it requires electricity, which is computational, required to run computational power on computers, on mining rigs, stuff like that. Whereas proof of stake, it requires putting money and betting essentially on validating blocks. So it doesn't require any electricity. It doesn't require a mining rig, and it will hopefully make the process a little more decentralized. Now, there's a lot of pros and cons with that, but that's essentially the first the first reason that they're trying to implement proof of stake.
Yeah, and so what was this first version that they upgraded for Casper? What is Casper trying to accomplish? Is it just completely proof of stake?
Casper will eventually be proof of stake. Casper is the implementation, because essentially with their proof of stake, you'll have to stake through a smart contract, which will be Casper. Now, Casper is named after the friendly ghost, just if anyone was wondering.
I actually didn't know that. That's
The
awesome.
first, yeah, I know, right? And the first implementation will be relatively simple. They're still going to keep the already proof of work process, and they're just going to implement very low level proof of stake ways that are going to act as maybe like checkpoints to help validate blocks. So it will be a long process before full proof of stake is implemented. And this is the first one, which is, long overdue. I think that the original timeline was to do this sometime in January or February. So finally, this is getting done.
And if once they do transition to proof of stake, what does that mean for Ethereum?
So it has a lot of implications, but one of the big ones will be that they won't have any mining, so they won't have any major electrical consumption that proof of work always has. It will hopefully democratize the process a little more because you won't have to own a mining rig in order to partake in voting. You'll just be able to stake ether to vote. Now, how much ether they end up needing is a subject for debate, but it's kind of also required for scalability, because if you have a proof of work system, it makes it a lot easier to scale through methods like sharding, plasma, and stuff like that. So it's overall, I think, a really good process and a good step forward.
Awesome. And I see Jack Blair, one of my good friends, just commented, "Yo, love the content. Appreciate it, Jack. Keep on coming and ask any questions." All right. Last article we got. Coinbase delivers knockout report on its finances. So Coinbase came out and they released a letter. And in this letter, that they said that they have a 1,000% increase in their surge transaction capacity relative to Q3 of 2017. And so Q3 of 2017 was the time when everything was going up. Bitcoin was nearly at 20,000. And I guess I was more towards Q4, but this is the time where it was just, things were drastically going up. And a lot of these exchanges like Coinbase and Binance did a pretty good job, but a lot of these exchanges, Kraken, they just shut down at times because they couldn't handle all of the transactions that were coming in and out. So, and they would literally shut it down where you couldn't withdraw your money. So that's pretty scary, but it's pretty cool to see that Coinbase, they've just been hiring like crazy and they feel like something is coming. What do you think about Coinbase?
Yeah, I think they're a juggernaut in the making. And you're right about they're hiring like crazy. If you go to their website, I think they have probably 25, 30 open positions. Huh. And, they've been acquiring companies like earn.com. They're acquiring browsers that can be utilized for easier ways to access, the Ethereum blockchain or, your wallet or stuff like that. So I think that Coinbase is probably the number one player out there as far as when it comes to exchanges. They're doing a lot of things right. They have a very progressive and forward-thinking mindset about where the space is, where it can be in 5 years and where it can be in 50. And I'm excited about all the things they do.
Yeah, and they've been acquiring different companies. We've talked about that before, earn.com, and there was like 3 other companies recently. I mean, they've just been going wild. And one thing I do want to talk about too is with Ethereum, there was all that FUD saying that Ethereum was about to be deemed a security. They were having this big meeting with the SEC. But if you really connect the dots, you look behind the scenes, Coinbase announced a couple months ago, probably like a month ago, that they were going to at some point bring on ERC20 tokens. And what an ERC20 token is, it's a coin, it's a token that is built on top of the Ethereum platform. And many of them, all of them, well, I wouldn't say all, but most of them, the way they got their funding was through an ICO, an initial coin offering. They raised money from people. And there's a lot of people are saying, well, that's a security because you raise money and these people expect a return on their investment. They expect a profit. But Coinbase announced that they were going to have these ERC20 tokens soon on their platform. And they also have said that they've been working very closely with regulators and with the government. And so I don't see the government just coming down and saying, look, Ethereum's a security and everything else is a security. We're throwing down the hammer right now, and it's going to screw over Coinbase and everyone else, because Coinbase has been doing so much trying to expect a huge growth. So do you see that too, or do you have another opinion about how Coinbase and how closely they're working with regulators and where you see this whole space going?
Yeah, I think they've been working incredibly close with regulators. I think that regulators know that they're walking on eggshells in the sense that they don't want to do anything that is an overstep, and they don't want to do anything that's going to negatively affect the market. And I think Coinbase and a lot of other exchanges and a lot of other companies in general have been working with the regulatory bodies, giving them advice, saying, hey, this is what will happen if you list Ether as a security, or if you list, this as a commodity. And I think, it's hard to tell what they'll end up doing, whether they'll classify it as a security or not. If they did, I could see them maybe taking a more lenient approach rather than saying, okay, Ether's now a security and everything that it's done up until this point is illegal.
Yeah.
I think they could do some sort of like grandfather clause into it. But, the SEC and a bunch of other regulatory commissions and the people in charge of those have come out and said, if it was an ICO, it was probably a security. So it's hard to know which way they'll lean, but they're going to lean toward some type of regulation that is able to protect the vast amount of people.
Awesome. Well, so like we mentioned, Consensus, biggest crypto conference, one of the biggest in the world, is happening next week. Last year, Bitcoin went up 69% during the conference, 138% 2 months afterwards. So keep your eyes peeled. If you don't know, if you're just watching this and you know nothing about cryptocurrency, first off, awesome. Good for you for trying to learn and understand this stuff, because it is the future. So look at this and keep your eyes peeled on this conference. Do you know if you can live stream it anywhere or watch anything?
I think a lot of the conferences, like talks, the event panel discussions, will have some sort of maybe audio afterwards. Some of them might be live streamed. I don't know exactly, but there will definitely be a bunch of people writing up about what's going on at Consensus Day 1, Consensus Day 2. And if you're in New York, I highly recommend you go to a lot of the meetups that are happening, because there's a lot of after-hour events and stuff like that. And even if you don't know anything, or even if you know a lot, it'll be really valuable, and you can meet a lot of awesome people.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the crypto space, we love to meet people who don't know anything, because you're the people we're trying to help and educate so that you can get in and we can really get this to be widespread and have mass adoption. So if you have any questions, again, you can also, do questions via here on our YouTube lives, or email me at austinpatricrypto@gmail.com. You can send us emails, we'll respond. But other than that, I think that's a night. So with that said, again, make sure to keep up with the Consensus conference, and we will see you next time. Good night, everyone, and make sure to get those cryptos.